When humans first reached the stars and made contact with the larger galaxy, they were met with a mixture of curiosity and dismissal. The Galactic Council, a group of the oldest and most powerful species in known space, barely paid attention at first. Humanity had not yet proven itself. The council members, some who had existed for thousands or even millions of years, saw Earth and its people as a small, fragile, and immature species. They looked at humans and quietly laughed at their attempts to join the interstellar community. They whispered to one another during meetings, smiling condescendingly, as if Earth was nothing more than an amusing child showing up at an adult gathering. Earth had sent diplomats, scientists, and explorers to present themselves to the galaxy. The humans were careful and polite. They explained their culture, their history, their achievements, and their dreams. They demonstrated technology, scientific breakthroughs, and philosophical ideas, trying to show that Earth could contribute to the galactic society. But all the while, the council barely listened. Humans were allowed to sit at the meetings, but only as observers. They could watch, take notes, and nod politely, but they were not allowed to vote or influence decisions. They were not invited to important strategy discussions. The galaxy treated them as if they were spectators in a play, watching the actors move, never expecting them to become the performers themselves. Even though the humans felt the disrespect, they did not show it openly. Their diplomats smiled, nodded, and took mental notes of every rule, every word, every nuance of the council's laws and agreements. Humans are a patient species. They knew that rushing into confrontation without preparation could be disastrous. They listened carefully, recording every detail, learning the weaknesses and strengths of the older species. While the galaxy laughed at them, humans quietly began to understand the complex web of alliances, obligations, and treaties that governed the stars over time. Humans realized that the galaxy's laughter was not only about them being new, but also about the galaxy underestimating their potential. Many of the other species had grown so confident in their power and control that they no longer considered that a small, seemingly fragile species could rise and challenge them. Humans were underestimated in every way: their military capability, their intelligence, their ingenuity, and most importantly, their persistence. To the Galactic Council, humans seemed almost fragile, like creatures who might blink out of existence if they faced even a small challenge. This underestimation, however, would become humanity's greatest advantage. During these early interactions, humans observed everything. They learned how the Council's politics worked, how older species negotiated, how they manipulated weaker civilizations, and how they exploited resources without concern for fairness. Humans also noticed how the council members spoke about Earth behind closed doors. The laughter was often cruel. They joked about how humans could never survive in interstellar politics, how they would fail if they tried to enforce their ideas, how their technology was primitive compared to the ancient civilizations of the galaxy. The humans took it all in, silently, and used it to plan their own strategies. Even though the Galactic Council dismissed them, humans continued to try to earn recognition. They sent missions to explore unclaimed systems, mapped new planets, and made small but meaningful discoveries. They offered to share their findings and technology, always emphasizing cooperation and peaceful interaction. But their efforts were met with polite rejection or indifference. The galaxy was not interested in humanity's contributions at that time. To the aliens, humans were amusing but ultimately irrelevant. Some of the younger species, those who had not yet achieved great power themselves, laughed openly, making jokes and mocking human appearances, habits, and even their language. Yet humans did not give up. They were determined to show that they were more than what the galaxy thought. On Earth, nations collaborated more closely than ever before. Space programs combined resources, scientists shared knowledge, and engineers worked around the clock. Humans understood that respect in the galaxy could not be demanded. It had to be earned through persistence, intelligence, and action. Even in the face of ridicule, humans maintained their dignity and continued their work, quietly preparing for the moment when the galaxy would have no choice but to take them seriously. One important part of this preparation was learning about galactic law. Humans studied every treaty, every clause, every regulation, even those that seemed irrelevant. They paid attention to the weaknesses, contradictions, and loopholes that could later give them leverage. While the Council laughed at humanity for being new and inexperienced, humans were silently building a foundation that would allow them to stand on equal footing one day. Every smile, every dismissal, every whisper against them was carefully noted and remembered. Despite the laughter and dismissal, some humans began to notice that the galaxy's oldest species were not as infallible as they appeared. Even though these species had existed for millions of years, they had their own rivalries, their own insecurities, and their own mistakes. Humans realized that patience, careful observation, and careful preparation could allow them to turn the galaxy's laughter into an advantage. Every council meeting they attended, every treaty they observed, every alien interaction became a lesson. Humanity was learning faster than anyone expected. And so, humanity continued on its quiet path. They did not retaliate, they did not protest loudly, and they did not demand immediate recognition. Instead, they worked, learned, and adapted. The galaxy laughed, thinking that humans would remain weak and insignificant. The Galactic Council believed that their dismissal was justified, but with each passing year, humans grew stronger, smarter, and more capable, laying the groundwork for a future where their voice would no longer be ignored. This phase of human history, marked by laughter and underestimation, would later be remembered as the time when humanity quietly prepared to change the balance of power in the galaxy. It was a time of observation, learning, and patience. The Council thought of humans as insignificant, but humans understood that real power was built silently and carefully. The very laughter that the galaxy poured on humanity would, in the years to come, become a reminder of how badly they had misjudged this small, persistent species. Humanity had already begun to see themselves differently. They no longer felt like mere observers or underdogs. They understood their strengths, their potential, and their unique ability to unite in ways the galaxy had never seen. And though the Council laughed at them, humans quietly vowed that one day, they would no longer be laughed at, they would be respected, and the galaxy would have no choice but to acknowledge their presence. As humans continued to observe the galaxy, they realized that the laughter and dismissal were only the beginning of a much bigger challenge. The older, more experienced species did not just ignore humanity, they began to take advantage of their newness. Humanity's patience and willingness to follow rules were seen as weaknesses. Some galactic powers started to exploit this, pushing the limits of what humans could do or tolerate. Trade agreements were written in ways that benefited alien civilizations far more than humanity. Territories were mapped, claimed, and even taken without full consideration of human interests. The galaxy treated Earth like a resource to be used, rather than a partner to be respected. It was not obvious at first. Everything appeared legal, everything seemed fair according to the treaties, but humans began to notice patterns. The rules were being interpreted in ways that allowed older species to gain an advantage. Human colonies were pressured to produce more than their fair share, to provide strategic resources, and to follow regulations that were confusing and sometimes contradictory. Some colonies struggled under these conditions, sending reports to Earth that spoke of hardship, exploitation, and unfair treatment. Yet, the Galactic Council did nothing. They dismissed the complaints, claiming that humans were simply unprepared for the realities of interstellar life. Even as these pressures increased, humanity did not respond with anger or rebellion. Instead, they studied the tactics being used against them. They observed how alien leaders negotiated, how they exploited loopholes, and how they applied rules selectively. They realized that every act of mockery or exploitation had a purpose. It tested humanity, it measured their reactions, and it defined what the galaxy thought humans could handle. The aliens believed that by constantly applying pressure, they could break humanity's spirit, forcing them into submission. But humans are resilient. Instead of being crushed under these pressures, they adapted. Each challenge became a lesson. If one colony faced an unfair tax on resources, the humans found ways to maximize efficiency and minimize loss. If a treaty restricted their ability to trade freely, they learned to work within the system while finding creative alternatives. Every act of exploitation forced humanity to grow stronger, smarter, and more united. They realized that compliance did not mean weakness. It could be an opportunity to learn and prepare for the future. During this time, the Galactic Council and other species continued to underestimate humanity. Some species openly mocked Earth's systems and technology, comparing them to ancient civilizations that had already reached peaks of power millions of years ago. Others doubted that humans could ever survive in a galaxy governed by cunning, ruthless, and patient civilizations. The aliens did not know that humanity was paying attention. Every joke, every sneer, every act of dismissal was recorded and analyzed. Humans were quietly learning the methods, the strategies, and the psychology of the older civilizations. Meanwhile, human leaders began to understand that the solution was not to fight immediately. They could not rely on anger or retaliation. They needed preparation, strategy, and knowledge. On Earth, nations began to coordinate in ways that had never happened before. Governments shared intelligence, scientific data, and technological developments. Humans pooled their knowledge and resources, understanding that strength comes from unity. For the first time, humanity's focus was not only on exploration or survival, but on creating a foundation that could withstand galactic pressure. One of the most important lessons humans learned during this phase was the art of patience. The galaxy assumed that humans were impulsive and weak. They believed that by pushing them, they could make humans react emotionally, make mistakes, and fail. But humans developed a new kind of patience. They learned to respond carefully, to observe quietly, and to act only when it was strategically advantageous. They realized that respect in the galaxy was not given, it had to be earned through intelligence, discipline, and timing. Despite all the exploitation, some humans began to see opportunities. If the galaxy could manipulate them, then the same rules could potentially be used by humans when the time was right. They began to map not only the resources of space but also the political weaknesses of other species. They noticed rivalries, envy, and mistrust among the older civilizations. They understood that the very systems designed to control humanity contained flaws that could be leveraged later. These discoveries were quiet victories. Even though humans could not openly challenge the Council or other species yet, they were building knowledge and preparing to turn the tables. Human colonies, too, learned to adapt. Many faced impossible demands and conditions, but they became creative in how they met them. Engineers designed new machines, scientists found efficient ways to produce energy and materials, and administrators developed systems to manage resources fairly. Every colony learned to endure and innovate under pressure. The galaxy thought they were testing human obedience, but humans were secretly training themselves to thrive under the harshest conditions. This was a crucial step in humanity's evolution as a galactic species. Through all of this, humans maintained their principles. They did not cheat or break the rules, even when the galaxy treated those rules unfairly. Their patience, fairness, and resilience were not signs of weakness. They were investments in a future where humanity could finally demand respect. While the older species continued to exploit them, humans continued to grow stronger, learning lessons in politics, strategy, and resourcefulness that no formal training could provide. Humanity had transformed quietly. They had endured ridicule, exploitation, and mockery. They had witnessed the galaxy's unfairness firsthand, and yet, they had not broken. They had learned, adapted, and grown. The galaxy, still laughing, believed that humanity's patience would eventually end in surrender. What the galaxy did not realize was that humanity's endurance was preparing them for a moment of change, a moment when the same species they had laughed at would prove that patience and strategy could turn the tables entirely. This period of exploitation and pressure was crucial. It taught humans the value of resilience, observation, and preparation. It revealed the weaknesses of the older civilizations and allowed humans to develop strategies that would later be decisive. The laughter of the galaxy, the attempts to manipulate, and the exploitation of Earth's colonies were all part of humanity's education. The species that had once been dismissed as weak and irrelevant was quietly becoming capable of challenging the very system that had mocked them. Humanity stood stronger than before, united by experience, strategy, and patience. They understood that the galaxy's mockery was temporary and that true strength comes not from immediate power but from preparation, adaptation, and endurance. The Council thought they were winning, but in reality, they were teaching humanity how to survive, grow, and ultimately, rise above every expectation. Humanity's time to act had not yet come, but it was being carefully prepared, one challenge at a time. While the galaxy continued to underestimate humanity, Earth was quietly preparing for a different kind of future. The humans had learned that reacting too early or too aggressively could be dangerous. Instead, they chose a path of careful observation, study, and preparation. This was not a rebellion, but a deliberate, strategic response to the unfair treatment they had endured. Humans realized that if they wanted to survive and eventually be respected, they needed to act not with brute force, but with intelligence, unity, and patience. They began to reorganize their resources, their knowledge, and even their societies to prepare for a time when they could stand on equal footing with the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. On Earth, governments, scientists, and military leaders began to work together in unprecedented ways. Space programs that had once competed for funding and recognition began sharing technology, discoveries, and data. Engineers collaborated across borders, developing ships, energy sources, and systems that could be useful both for exploration and defense. Scientists studied alien technologies that humans could access through trade or observation, learning what worked, what failed, and what could be improved. Humanity began to build a foundation that combined knowledge, creativity, and careful planning. Humans also studied diplomacy and law more closely than ever. They realized that the treaties and rules of the galaxy could be used not only to limit them but also to protect them, and even eventually to challenge those who had tried to exploit them. Lawyers and diplomats worked tirelessly to understand every clause, every loophole, and every regulation. Humans knew that intelligence and preparation could be more powerful than any weapon in the galaxy. Each discovery, each analysis, added to a growing body of knowledge that humanity would later use to shift the balance of power. Meanwhile, humans began training their militaries quietly but purposefully. The galaxy still underestimated them, thinking Earth's armed forces were small, uncoordinated, and inexperienced. But humans were not trying to fight immediately. They were building skills, strategies, and defensive technologies for the future. Military exercises simulated interstellar battles, resource defense, and colony protection. Humans were learning how to move quickly, adapt to unexpected situations, and defend themselves against far stronger opponents. Even the smallest colonies became centers of innovation and training. Every drill, every plan, every simulation was a step toward readiness. At the same time, humans started to focus on unity. For centuries, Earth had been divided by nations, politics, and rivalries. But the challenges of interacting with the galaxy demanded cooperation. Human societies began finding ways to communicate better, share knowledge, and work together despite differences. Leaders realized that this unity was humanity's greatest weakness. By learning to act as one species, humans would be able to survive where divided civilizations would fail. This new sense of unity was subtle at first, but it grew steadily, giving humans a quiet but powerful advantage over the older, fractured civilizations of the galaxy. In addition to building strength and knowledge, humans also focused on subtle influence. While they could not yet demand respect, they began quietly shaping galactic interactions in ways that favored them. They established trade networks, participated in scientific collaborations, and offered assistance where needed, all carefully controlled and measured. Humans demonstrated value without arrogance, proving that their contributions mattered. Many alien species began to rely on human technology, expertise, and coordination, without realizing the full extent of the preparation taking place. The galaxy still laughed, thinking humans were naive and dependent. But humanity's influence was quietly spreading. Perhaps most importantly, humans learned the power of observation. Every action of the Galactic Council and other species was watched closely. Humans noted rivalries, jealousy, and mistrust between older civilizations. They observed which species were cautious, which were reckless, and which could be manipulated or negotiated with. They studied communication patterns, decision-making processes, and even the personalities of individual leaders. This was not just preparation for conflict, it was preparation for survival and negotiation on a level the galaxy had never seen from a new species. Humans were quietly becoming experts in the politics, psychology, and strategies of interstellar life. Despite their quiet preparation, humans never abandoned their principles. They did not cheat, attack without reason, or manipulate unfairly. They acted within the rules of the galaxy while simultaneously learning how to use those rules to their advantage. In doing so, they developed a kind of silent strength, one that combined intelligence, resilience, and moral integrity. This strength was invisible to most of the galaxy, which continued to underestimate them. Many alien species assumed that humanity's compliance and patience were signs of weakness. In reality, humans were preparing for a time when that very patience would become their greatest weapon. As the years passed, humans grew confident in their capabilities. Colonies became hubs of innovation, producing new technologies and efficient systems. Scientists developed breakthroughs in energy, medicine, and engineering. Diplomats mastered the complexities of galactic law. Soldiers trained not just to fight, but to think strategically and act decisively. Humanity had transformed from a species that was laughed at into one that was quietly competent, powerful, and prepared. Yet they remained outwardly humble, waiting for the right moment to show the galaxy their true capabilities. This period of quiet preparation also allowed humans to reflect on their values. They realized that power without ethics could lead to destruction, and that cooperation and knowledge were as important as strength. They learned that patience, intelligence, and moral integrity could allow a species to survive challenges that seemed insurmountable. Humanity's rise was not just about gaining power. It was about proving that a species could grow, adapt, and thrive without losing sight of what made it unique. Humanity had fully transformed. No longer the naive observers that the galaxy had laughed at. They had become a species capable of defending themselves, influencing others, and navigating the most complex interstellar challenges. They had built a foundation of unity, intelligence, and preparation that would later allow them to challenge the galaxy's assumptions and assert their place among the stars. The laughter of the Council and other civilizations continued, but humans were no longer distracted by it. They knew that the time for recognition and respect would come, and they were ready to claim it. Humans had learned a critical lesson. Real power is not shown immediately. It is built quietly, patiently, and with careful planning. The galaxy believed that their patience was weakness. In reality, it was a strategy. Humanity's silence, their preparation, and their subtle influence were all part of a long-term plan to prove that the species they had laughed at could change the course of interstellar history. Every day, every decision, every action was a step toward a future where humans would no longer be ignored, dismissed, or underestimated. This was the quiet human response. Intelligence over impulse, preparation over panic, patience over immediate reaction. It was a response that the galaxy could not yet see, but one that would have consequences far beyond anyone's expectations. By observing, learning, and growing quietly, humans were not only surviving, they were preparing to rewrite the rules of the galaxy entirely. The moment of reckoning for humanity came quietly, yet it was more powerful than anyone in the galaxy could have imagined. For centuries, humans had been underestimated, dismissed, and exploited. The Galactic Council and other powerful species believed that Earth's patience and compliance meant weakness. They assumed that humans would continue to follow every rule, every treaty, and every expectation without question. But the galaxy had misread humanity's endurance. Humans had not been passive. They had been preparing, quietly, strategically, and meticulously. And now, the time had come to show the galaxy that patience, intelligence, and unity were far more powerful than ridicule or coercion. That breaking point came when an old, obscure clause in a treaty was used to seize a human colony. That colony had grown successful and independent. producing valuable resources and technologies, and it had caught the attention of a neighboring alien system. Using the treaty, the Council authorized the takeover of the colony, claiming that Earth had no legal right to control it. On the surface, this appeared to be a simple enforcement of the law. But for humanity, this was the final test. The galaxy thought humans would protest helplessly, beg for fairness, or quietly comply. They had no idea that humanity had been planning a response for decades, one that would completely upend the existing order. Instead of reacting with immediate anger, humans acted with precision. Earth's representatives released detailed documentation of the Council's biases, manipulations, and exploitation of human colonies over the years. Every unfair trade agreement, every act of condescension, every secret manipulation was exposed. Humanity presented undeniable proof of how the treaties had been used to exploit them while benefiting older species. The evidence was compiled meticulously, showing that the galaxy's oldest civilizations had not only underestimated humanity, but had also acted unjustly in multiple ways. The human response was deliberate, controlled, and undeniable. It could not be ignored. Then humanity took the boldest step of all. They withdrew from every major galactic treaty simultaneously. Supply chains, trade agreements, and defense pacts, all agreements that had once bound humanity to the galaxy, were instantly nullified. Human colonies no longer followed the rules imposed by the Council. Ships stopped transporting alien goods. Scientists halted collaborations that were one-sided, and communications that had once been monitored and influenced were cut or redirected according to human interests. The galaxy was thrown into chaos. Systems that had relied on Earth's logistics, energy, and technology suddenly found themselves unable to operate. Entire networks froze, alliances weakened, and the Council realized too late that humanity's patience had been a trap, not a surrender. The immediate effect was stunning. Alien species who had relied on humans for engineering, transportation, or medical technologies discovered that they were dependent on Earth in ways they had never considered. Supply lines for critical resources collapsed. Military operations that had counted on human coordination were thrown into confusion. Strategic systems that were managed by human algorithms malfunctioned or slowed. The very systems that had allowed older civilizations to control or manipulate humans were now their undoing. In their arrogance, the galaxy had failed to see how deeply intertwined humanity had become with interstellar operations, and how quickly the removal of Earth's participation could destabilize everything. Even with all this disruption, humanity did not act aggressively. They did not seize control of alien systems, attack colonies, or demand revenge. Instead, they acted decisively but with restraint. They focused on independence, security, and fairness. The human colonies continued to thrive, now free from alien interference, while Earth carefully calculated each step in response to the galaxy's attempts to regain control. Humanity's aim was clear: respect, not domination. They wanted the galaxy to understand that they could no longer be ignored or manipulated. The shockwaves of this action spread through every corner of the interstellar community. Many alien civilizations were forced to rethink their approach. Leaders of older species who had once laughed at humanity were suddenly confronted with evidence that Earth had been preparing for this moment all along. The supposed weakness they had mocked, human patience, compliance, and humility, was in fact a form of power that they had failed to recognize. The galaxy realized that they had been blind to the potential of a species they had considered insignificant. The lessons of centuries, quietly learned by humanity, had culminated in a demonstration of strength that required no weapons, no war, and no violence. Trade and diplomacy had to be renegotiated. Species that had relied on humans for logistics, communications, and science could no longer take Earth for granted. The old treaties, which had been used to control and exploit humanity, were now void. The Council and other species scrambled to understand the new reality. Humans, for the first time in galactic history, were negotiating from a position of power. They dictated the terms for any future agreements. They insisted that respect, equality, and fairness would be mandatory conditions for participation. The galaxy could no longer treat Earth as an observer or a weak partner. They had to recognize humanity as an equal. While this shift was dramatic, it was also subtle. Humans did not use fear or aggression to assert themselves. Their power came from preparation, intelligence, and the ability to act decisively when the time was right. It was a demonstration of strategic patience and careful planning. The galaxy, which had assumed that humans were naive and compliant, now understood that patience and observation were forms of strength far more dangerous than brute force. Humanity's actions had created a turning point in galactic history, where the rules had changed and the old order no longer applied. At the heart of this transformation was humanity's ability to combine ethics with strategy. Humans could have sought revenge for centuries of exploitation and ridicule, but they chose not to. They acted with a focus on fairness and independence, showing that strength does not require cruelty or aggression. This combination of moral integrity and strategic foresight made humanity a formidable force that the galaxy could not ignore. The species that had been laughed at for centuries had now become a standard of respect and power in the interstellar community. The galaxy was forced to acknowledge a simple truth: the species they had mocked, laughed at, and exploited could no longer be controlled. Humanity had demonstrated that endurance, intelligence, and preparation could overcome arrogance and exploitation. The old treaties, the old hierarchies, and the old power structures had been shattered not through war, but through the careful, deliberate assertion of independence. Humans had turned the tools of their exploitation into instruments of empowerment, and the galaxy could do nothing but take notice. The lesson of this period was clear to all species. Respect cannot be demanded. It must be earned through competence, preparation, and moral integrity. The laughter that had once accompanied humanity's presence was gone, replaced by cautious attention, respect, and, in some cases, fear. Humanity had proven that patience was not weakness, compliance was not surrender, and humility could conceal incredible power. The galaxy had learned the cost of underestimating a species that had been dismissed for too long. Humanity emerged from this phase not as conquerors, but as equals. They had maintained their principles, preserved their colonies, and secured their independence, all while demonstrating the consequences of arrogance, exploitation, and underestimation. The galaxy was forever changed. The species that had laughed at humanity now understood that the era of dismissing Earth and its people was over. From this point forward, humans would no longer be treated as underdogs, observers, or weaklings. They had claimed their place among the stars, and the galaxy had no choice but to respect it. With the galaxy finally recognizing humanity as a force to be reckoned with, Earth and its colonies began a new era, one where respect was earned, not demanded. The centuries of ridicule, exploitation, and underestimation had ended, replaced by cautious attention and acknowledgement. The Galactic Council, along with other older civilizations, could no longer treat humans as observers or weaklings. The actions of humanity had made it clear that patience, preparation, and intelligence could achieve what brute force alone could not. Humans had reshaped the galaxy, not through conquest, but through strategy, unity, and moral integrity. Humanity's first step in this new era was to establish fairness and equality in interstellar relations. They did not seek revenge against those who had once mocked them. Instead, they focused on creating treaties and agreements that were balanced, just, and mutually beneficial. Humans insisted that future interactions would require transparency, equality, and respect. This approach surprised many older species. They had expected humanity to seek power aggressively, to dominate and punish, but instead, humans acted with wisdom and restraint. It became clear that humanity's strength lay not in sheer force, but in combining intelligence, preparation, and ethical decision-making. This period also saw a profound change in diplomacy. Humans who had once been excluded from key discussions were now sought after as advisors, negotiators, and mediators. Their knowledge of the galaxy's laws, alliances, and politics made them invaluable. Where once they had been laughed at for being inexperienced, humans were now respected for their insight, fairness, and ability to see the bigger picture. Diplomats from Earth participated in high-level meetings and influenced major galactic decisions. Their opinions were no longer optional, they were essential. Humanity had proven that a species could rise to prominence through careful strategy, patience, and integrity, and the galaxy had no choice but to acknowledge it. Science and technology also played a key role in earning respect. Human scientists, who had quietly been advancing their knowledge for centuries, were now recognized as leaders in innovation. Breakthroughs in energy, medicine, transportation, and communication transformed not only human colonies but also the wider galaxy. Many alien civilizations, who had once dismissed human technology as primitive, now relied on it for critical operations. Ships, energy systems, and medical technologies developed by humans became standards across star systems. This recognition was not the result of competition or coercion, it was the result of persistent effort, collaboration, and ingenuity. Unity among humans became another cornerstone of their influence. Centuries of learning to cooperate across national, cultural, and political boundaries had created a species capable of acting decisively and cohesively. Unlike many older species, which were often divided by rivalries and disagreements, humans could present a united front. This ability to act together gave them tremendous leverage in negotiations and operations. Humanity's success proved that unity, combined with intelligence and patience, could outweigh raw power, history, or age. The galaxy, which had once laughed at human divisions, now marveled at their cohesion. Even with respect secured, humanity remained vigilant. They understood that trust must be maintained, that power without responsibility can be dangerous, and that the galaxy would always be filled with challenges. Human leaders ensured that their colonies, trade networks, and technologies were secure. Education, research, and training continued to strengthen humanity's position. They knew that respect, once gained, must be preserved through continuous effort. This awareness of responsibility distinguished humans from many older civilizations, which often relied on their history or dominance to maintain authority. Humanity's respect was earned through competence and integrity. not fear or intimidation. One of the most important lessons of this era was that true influence comes from consistency, patience, and intelligence. Humanity had endured centuries of ridicule and exploitation. They had observed, studied, and prepared while the galaxy laughed at them. And when the right moment arrived, they acted decisively, reshaping interstellar relations without resorting to destruction. This quiet, calculated approach became a model for others. Alien civilizations began to recognize that strength is not only about power or age, it is about endurance, planning, intelligence, and moral responsibility. Humanity had set a new standard for what it meant to be a respected and influential species in the galaxy. Humanity's actions also created lasting change in galactic culture. The old tendency to underestimate or mock younger species began to fade. Civilizations across the galaxy became more cautious in how they treated emerging civilizations, humans, who had proven that even a seemingly weak or inexperienced species could reshape interstellar politics if it acted with patience, intelligence, and unity. The laughter that once accompanied humanity's presence was gone, replaced by respect, admiration, and, in some cases, fear. The galaxy had learned that underestimation comes at a high cost. At the heart of this new era was humanity's ethical approach. They could have used their newfound influence to dominate or punish. They could have taken revenge on those who exploited them. Instead, they acted with fairness, focusing on creating balance and equality. This moral choice reinforced the respect they had earned. Alien civilizations came to see humanity not only as powerful but also as principled. Humans demonstrated that strength and ethics could coexist, that a species could rise to prominence without abandoning its values. This combination made humanity unique and gave them lasting influence in the galaxy. As the galaxy adjusted to this new reality, humans continued to expand and explore, but now as equals rather than as subjects of ridicule. Their colonies thrived, supported by advanced technology, strategic planning, and ethical governance. Humans shared knowledge, collaborated with other species on fair terms, and helped stabilize systems that had previously been vulnerable. Their influence was constructive rather than destructive, showing that a species could reshape the galaxy without resorting to war or conquest. Humanity had completed its transformation. From the species that had once been laughed at, dismissed, and exploited, humans had become a respected and powerful force in the galaxy. The Galactic Council and other civilizations could no longer ignore them. Humans had proven that endurance, intelligence, preparation, unity, and moral integrity could achieve what ridicule, oppression, and exploitation could not. The lessons of centuries had culminated in a species that was capable, respected, and ready to shape its destiny. Humanity's story became a legend, a lesson for the galaxy. Those who are underestimated may be the most dangerous when patience, intelligence, and unity are applied over time. The species that had once been mocked for being small, inexperienced, and fragile had transformed the interstellar order. Respect had been earned, not demanded. The laughter that had once accompanied humanity's rise had vanished, replaced by a lasting understanding that this species could never again be dismissed. In the end, humanity's victory was not a moment of conquest, but a moment of revelation. They had shown the galaxy that true power is built quietly, patiently, and with principle. They had turned their weakness being underestimated into strength, and their patience mocked by others into a decisive advantage. The galaxy had learned that respect cannot be forced, it must be earned through intelligence, preparation, and moral integrity. Humanity had earned it, forever changing the balance of power among the stars.